So it just so coincided that, so you know what is going on now, and March the 8th is coming soon, so we decided not to postpone anything, but just to come here to see what you've got here. How do you use it? What are the prospects of the center? I have to say it is impressive. Masha showed me so how they manage it, how they handle it. So under her supervision, I also played around with some joysticks. It's good, especially since they're new generation of the simulators. So I heard it from the head and I saw it with my own eyes. Obviously, we have to use this meeting to discuss, I guess, about the prospects of the developing the industry, to talk about the today's circumstances, so we can't avoid talking about that. That's given. But first of all, I would like to congratulate you all on the upcoming holiday, March the 8th, to wish all the best, all your colleagues, to all the women in Russia. I will address them a little later, to all of them. But now I would like to say, if we talk about the industry where you work in, that you belong to, I think there are more than 70,000 females, there are pilots, more than 200 first pilots, second pilots. Well, I'm not even talking about flight attendants, because that's special crew, special case. And everyone always had a lot of respect for the aviation industry, and for the females in aviation even more so. I think early last century we had first women in aviation. They really excelled during the Great Patriotic War. We know all these famous names of female regiments who fought during that war. And still we have female women all over, dispatchers, engineers, flight attendants, pilots. So it's a really strong women presence that complements the male part of the aviation industry. So I would suggest to stop with an introduction with that. I think it would be more useful and it would be more concrete if I am to take your questions. So let's switch to that. So once again, I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday of March the 8th. Thank you. So please, are there any questions, or we will just drink some tea? We've got questions. Good afternoon, Mr. Putin. I'm a second pilot of Airbus, and my question is about the situation in Ukraine. We all support your actions, the special military operation that is unfolding there, proceeding there. And the main question that we have, every one of us have, why this operation started, and was it possible to avoid it? We understand and we support your actions, but our hearts are concerned about our families, about our loved ones who live in Ukraine. So we know that civilians do not suffer, but please reassure us, what is at the end of this path? What will this operation be, when this operation be over? I will try to be brief, so I will try to start at the very gist of the issue. I said that at the beginning of the operation, and I used to tell it before this decision was made. A difficult decision, I have to admit. So what is it about? After the coup d'etat, anti-constitutional coup d'etat, that was actively supported, unfortunately, by the Western countries. So, and they are not even hiding that. They said directly that they spent $5 billion. They were giving out, handing out hot pies and so on and so forth. And instead of bringing the situation back, even if it went out of control, even if it got too excessive, so they planned one thing, but it turned out differently, still they had to bring it back to the political vein, especially since the beginning of this coup d'etat. The three foreign ministers came to Kiev and signed agreement with the then authorities, and they guaranteed They were guarantors of those agreements, that it was going to remain political. But nothing of that happened, so they overthrew the government. They supported those who overthrew the government, and then you all know what happened next in Crimea, in the southeast of Ukraine, and Donbass, where people didn't support that coup. So in Crimea, people voted at the referendum to become part of the Russian Federation, and of course we couldn't help but supporting that, especially since they were threatened by nationalists. And I'm going to say now that we were right back then. We have evidence of that. And then at the same time, events started to unfold in Donbass. Where did it lead to? The people who started resisting to what was happening, so they were persecuted. And there, in those territories, Kiev authorities launched a military operation, two punitive, large-scale military operation using heavy weaponry, using aviation. So they were bombing, they were shelling Donetsk squares from the skies with tanks, with planes. So both these military campaigns, they failed. So they were defeated. After that, the so-called Minsk agreements were signed, or the complex package of measures, as they are also called. And it showed the path of the peaceful resolution of this conflict. And we did everything we could to follow this path, to restore the territorial integrity of Ukraine and to protect the interests of the people who live there. What did they demand? They demanded elementary things, basic things, the right to speak their native language. In this case, it was Russian language. To live, to follow their traditions. Nothing special. Absolutely nothing. But no, so they blocked those territories, they put embargo on them, so they canceled the banking system, they stopped paying welfares and retirement pensions, so they were just handing out some small sums. Still, they had to go through a lot to get those pensions. So maybe I will be too direct because I'm just thinking of it now. The situation makes me speak things like that, talk about things like that, because you see, when in one region and in another region, things like that are happening, when people are getting wounded and killed, and then, well, that's a separate issue, and the local authorities have to deal with that. And then they start killing those animals, they shooting them down. But people in Donbass are not stray dogs. 13 to 14,000 were killed throughout those years. More than 500 children were killed. But what's especially intolerable is that this so-called civilized West prefers not to notice that, not to pay attention all these years, all these 8 years. And recently, the Kyiv authorities started saying it publicly, directly, that they are not going to implement the Minsk agreements. They were told it from the TV screens, online. They were saying that publicly, we don't like it, we're not going to implement it. And they were accusing Russia that we are the ones who are not implementing that. But that makes no sense. It's absurd. They are calling the white the black, and they're calling black the white. And then it got worse. All of a sudden, they started saying that they were going... Well, they were saying about that for a long time. But they became more and more vocal about admitting Ukraine to NATO. Do you imagine what it could result in, and still can? Because in accordance with the treaty of these organizations, all the other members of the alliance are supposed to support any member in case of the conflict. No one admits that Crimea belongs to Russia, so now they are fighting in Donbass, the same they will do in Crimea, and then we would have to fight the entire alliance. Do you understand what would be the consequences? I think everyone understands that, and now they are talking about acquiring nuclear status, acquiring nuclear weapons. We can't